We on Five Sports Podcast, the spot, season number 4, episode number 60. And yeah, man, we back in this thing, man. Episode number 60, man. This has been a long season, man. Season number 4, we jumped off this thing, man. Starting off in August, man, doing the prelims of the National Football League season. We was in the dog days of the MLB season when we jumped this thing off in season number 4. And here we are, man, on episode number 60. In nice hot June, man. It's raining a lot in the north or the southeastern part of the United States. Everywhere else has been pretty hot, man, as we in the summertime, man. School is out. You know, everybody's in a festive mood pretty much, man, for the hot summer that we got coming upon us. And things are heating up across the sporting landscape. And once again, if it's your first time listening, man, we on Five Sports Podcast, the spot. We provide hot fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're OG of the show, man, I appreciate the check-in, man. I appreciate all the love and all the feedback. And boy, as I mentioned, things are heating up across the sporting landscape. First thing first, we are here on the eve of Game 6 of the NBA Finals. We got the Oklahoma City Thunder up 3-2. You know, last time I checked in, man, the Thunder wasn't in pole position in the NBA Finals, but here we are. It's game number 6 will be tomorrow, Thursday night. ABC, of course, man, up in Indianapolis. Know the fan base is going to be on one, man, for game number 6 in the NBA Finals. The Thunder obviously was able to take game number 5 and a very well played game in game number 5. You know, Oklahoma City looks like they was trying to run away with the game. The Indiana Pacers, man, they came back like gangbusters as they've been doing all playoffs long to get that thing down to 2 points with about 7 minutes left. And then Oklahoma City, man, ratchet up the defense. And they was able to prevail, man, to go up 3-2 and on the eve and 1 game away from winning that first NBA championship as an organization. And big time news, obviously, in the series. And I'll get into this a little bit more in depth coming up. But Tyrese Halliburton, looks like Tyrese Halliburton is up in the air, man, for game number 6. You know, had the calf injury, man, went down in game number 5, man, early in the second quarter of the game. Was able to come back and bounce back in the game after he went back to the locker room. And he definitely, to me, was a shell of himself when he came back. Really wasn't, you know, looking for a shot. You know, his offense was pretty much parked all game long because he had no field goals. You know, in the game, all the points that he had was basically at the free throw line. And Oklahoma City, this is an organization, you know, ran by the general manager, Sam Presti. You know, he's been there for, it seems like, forever and a day. You know, he was there with, you know, Kevin Durant and obviously Russell Westbrook and James Harden, you know, drafted all of those gentlemen, you know, built a nice little squad. And then, you know, they went their separate ways and all 3 of them won NBA MVP awards. You know, KD was able to win an NBA championship, 2 of them boys with the Golden State Warriors. You know, James Harden became a whole system in itself. Russell Westbrook went on to the triple-double machine, winning him an MVP award, you know, before he left Oklahoma City. And this is an interesting series, man, especially when you get into basically either the final game will be tomorrow or game number 7 will be played on Sunday. And so, man, it's kind of, you know, exciting. It's been an exciting series. I know a lot of people have been critical as far as just the ratings been down. We all expected that going in. You know, when you don't have a Steph Curry, when you don't have a LeBron James, when you don't have a Kevin Durant, when you don't have a Giannis Antetokounmpo, when you don't have, you know, say those big name stars, of course the ratings are going to be down. So we already knew what was cracking, say, with that. But to me, this is what I consider a basketball lover series, man. If you're ingrained in the game, man, just as I am, you know, it's definitely an exciting series. And I'm going to get into, you know, what kind of cracked off or jumped off in game number 5, as well as what we're looking at in game number 6. You know, those who are OG of the show already knew I had Oklahoma City coming into this series, man, in 6 games. I might be true on that, but I'm going to get into that. Because it's definitely going to be an exciting game in game number 6 up in Indianapolis tomorrow night. Also across the sporting landscape, and this was kind of breaking news, man, across the news desk, man, found out about this, man, a few hours ago, is that the Los Angeles Lakers, they always make sure that they make some news, especially in the NBA Finals or around the NBA Finals. one of the flagship franchises across the NBA and across all sports. Jeannie Buss, resident owner, of the Los Angeles Lakers. To me, it was pretty cool. Obviously, just from a lady standpoint, female standpoint, man, being the owner of the Los Angeles Lakers, acquiring that, and just the whole situation with her late great father, Dr. Jerry Buss. And there was a little friction within the family, man, with the transfer of the ownership. But Jeannie held it down. Jeannie held it down from the standpoint of from the era of the last of what we saw of the late great Kobe Bryant. Those particular lean gears. Transitioning, bringing in LeBron James out to Los Angeles for the Los Angeles Lakers, and they was able to win an NBA championship in 2020. Most recently, we had the acquisition of Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks, trading him for Anthony Davis. That was a big-time move for the Los Angeles Lakers. And I hear that the Buss family just basically entered into an agreement to sell majority ownership of the Los Angeles Lakers to Mark Walter. And those who are not familiar with Mark Walter is basically the owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers. To me, it's just kind of mind-boggling that two historic franchises in Los Angeles, one of the big or two brand name franchises across all professional sports. There's one gentleman that basically owns the majority stake in both of the franchises. Man, and it went for $10 billion, which is a whole big bag of corn. We all knew that the Los Angeles Lakers, man, was going to set the precedent whenever they was going to be sold, or whenever Jeannie Buss was going to sell the Lakers, that you knew they was going to go for the biggest price tag that we've ever seen for a sports franchise in the history of professional sports. And we are here. So, that's a big time move. Now, Jeannie Buss is still going to be what you consider kind of a consultant, or, a resident staple still with the Los Angeles Lakers. But this is huge news for me, because I never thought that the Buss family, especially in present day time, was in a position to sell the Los Angeles Lakers. And I know what y'all thinking out there, and I know I thought of this when I first seen the news. Where was Magic Johnson at? Magic Johnson obviously knows Mark Walter very well. He's in the ownership group of the Los Angeles Dodgers presently. And I'm not sure if Magic is within this deal. I'm not sure. It's definitely something I got to kind of do a little bit more research on. Last time we seen Magic Johnson a couple of days ago, he made an appearance on First Take. Did a great job, man. It's always good, man, to see Magic Johnson, man, talking basketball, man. Just, one of the greatest winners in the history of the sport. To me, the greatest point guard to ever, lace up some shoes, man. It's just to see, him on First Take. It was pretty cool, man. It's obviously Magic right now is on his summer-long vacation tour. So I'm not sure if he missed the text, didn't get the call, missed the memo, but I was a little bit surprised not seeing, Magic Johnson's name pop up in this whole acquisition and in this whole move, first and foremost. And we'll see what this does for the Los Angeles Lakers moving forward. As one order of business is they gotta be in a position now whether to make a decision, which to me is probably obvious, is that they gotta re-sign Luka Doncic. He's going to get a huge deal, a little bit less coin than what he would get if he was still with the Dallas Mavericks, but still indeed it's going to be a big coin. We know that LeBron James is kind of weaning himself down, man, in kind of the twilight part of his career. And don't get me, and don't come at me, and don't at me, LeBron James lovers, because we all know, man, the man can't play basketball forever. So this is kind of, the final stages of his career. And we'll see what this move does for not only the Los Angeles Lakers, but just the LA sports scene as well. Obviously with Walter owning the Los Angeles Dodgers. So we'll see what this thing do moving forward. Also news out of the NFL, the National Football League, man. Just a little tidbit. I thought that was kind of funny and kind of interesting, man. Shedeur Sanders just got popped off speeding, doing a $101 up there in Cleveland. And I'm not going to front. I'm not going to be a hypocrite, man. If I had access to the vehicles that this gentleman has, man, at the age that he's at, in his early 20s, I would have been on the same swag. I would have been on the same demo. You give me a Lamborghini at 22 years old, 23 years old, a Porsche or something like that. Oh, yeah, I'm out there doing $160 damn near. So I can't front, man. And the reason I mentioned Shedeur Sanders, obviously Deion Sanders has been in the news a little bit more recently, just kind of getting well, just had a health situation, and it hadn't really been clear exactly what's been going on, say with Deion. But I wish him well wishes, man, as Colorado, the program, they're in the, summer football slate, man. So definitely want to see Coach Prime, man, get out there, man, and get back with his ball club, man, and just well wishes out to him first and foremost. So I just thought that was pretty interesting, man, just to kind of see that tidbit. We all know, man, that job has basically got, Shedeur Sanders' name written all over it. He just got to put, his nose to the grindstone, man, go in there and, do the right things for the Cleveland Browns. And I do think that he's going to have a great opportunity to get the starting quarterback job for that organization. So we'll see what that thing do as well. And also, man, congratulations to the Florida Panthers, man. The Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup for the second consecutive year. This is a hockey club, man, that's been to 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals, man, banking 2 of them, man. So definitely congratulations to their whole organization, man, and just, all in the avid fan base, man, down there in the Sunrise, Florida area. Just the whole just swag, and just especially when you see a team, man, win 2 in a row, especially in this sporting landscape across all North American sports. We know that's a huge deal. There hadn't been a lot of teams that we've seen in the recent years be able to repeat. I mean, the last NBA team we've seen repeat was the Golden State Warriors with, Kevin Durant, obviously, and as well as Steph Curry and that whole bunch. That was the last NBA team to repeat. So we've not really seen a lot of repeats as far as in recent memory. So first and foremost, man, congratulations to the Florida Panthers, man, Stanley Cup champions of 2025. And also, we got the Caitlin Clark beef. We got beef out here on these streets. Caitlin Clark, man, got into a little scuffle, man, the other day, man. She's been playing some outstanding ball for the Indiana Fever, just hitting them long tray balls, man, just out there doing what she do. I've been watching them basically with an eagle eye. I believe this team, obviously the big game, I got an opportunity to watch in its entirety, man, when they knocked off the New York Liberty, knocking them off from the undefeated, Rams of the WNBA. We all know, obviously, they're defending WNBA champions. So that was a huge win and a huge confident boost for the Indiana Fever. Indianapolis as a whole is on one, obviously, with the Indiana Pacers being in the NBA Finals. But just a little, little hiccups and just a little beef I'm seeing out here. Obviously, it was a little scrap, last night, man, with the Indiana Fever and, Caitlin Clark, man. I just thought that was very, very funny and very, very interesting. And I know a lot of people going to go down the road, man, as far as, man, they jealous of her. Man, they hating on her. Oh, man, look, and all of that. Nah, I'm not finna get into none of that hyperbole, man. At the end of the day, if you competitive and, she, like to, shoot her tray balls and talk a little junk from time to time, it's going to be a little chippiness in that. It's going to be a little scrap in that. I'm from the school, fam. You got to walk it like you talk it. Meaning that you out there, talking good junk. It's going to come your way. It's going to get a little chippy. So that's just basketball as a whole. And I was, for me, I'm glad nobody got hurt. Don't get it twisted. But to me, I kind of like that a little bit. Obviously the flag bearer for the WNBA currently, and well deserving. I mean, outstanding player, just, put, college basketball damn near on her back when she was at the University of Iowa. And just to see, her now and just her, Indiana Fever kind of going up, the echelon as far as being a real legitimate contender in the WNBA, man, I kind of like that chippiness. So I ain't going to front on that, man. But I thought that was very, very funny and very, very interesting. And also, too, man, later up in the show, I'm going to get into this whole thing, man, with LeBron James, man. LeBron James, as you guys may know, got the whole podcast now with Steve Nash, him and Steve Nash chopping up game, man, talking, various, things across the sport landscape. And there was some interesting comments that, he made about, the whole ring culture and just all of that. Went into a tangent as far as, great players, not getting respect who don't got a ring, and that he don't understand, why ring culture is a whole big thing. Boy, stop. So I'm going to get into the hypocrisy from LeBron James, man, a little bit later on in the show, man. I got a little interesting tidbit about that, man. But coming up, we're going to get into the NBA Finals, man, as we're on the eve of game number 6 in the NBA Finals, as the Oklahoma City Thunder is up 3-2 in the series. Word on the street is Halliburton is obviously banged up. It's 50-50 whether he'll play or not. I'm going to get into that whole situation with the NBA Finals. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The spot. Welcome back. And we on the eve of game number 6 in the 2025 NBA Finals. Oklahoma City Thunder up 3-2, one victory away from winning their first NBA title as an organization. We got the reigning NBA MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the doorstep to go into rare air, people. Rare air. Meaning that there is very, very rare air, man, when you talk about a guy that won the MVP award, led the league in scoring, and also, too, won an NBA championship in the same season. And if I kick across just the names that's just on that list, obviously MJ, the greatest of all time, man, Michael Jordan, definitely on that list. You know, Shaquille O'Neal is on that list. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is on that list. That's a very, very, top tier creme de la creme, as they would say, across the NBA landscape. So, definitely Shai Gilgeous-Alexander not only would be a big time, victory for the Thunder organization, but it would put his name into very, very rare air, as they're on the eve and the doorstep of winning an NBA championship. For the Indiana Pacers, this has been a team that nobody thought that they would get here outside of Indianapolis when these playoffs began. Nobody did. And, there's a lot of talk about, putting respect on their name and all of that. This was a team that I remember, man, just around, midpoint, a little bit, shorter than the midpoint part, or around about the midpoint part of the season. This team was under 500. And just to see what they've been able to do, Rick Carlisle, great head coach, man, former NBA champion with the Dallas Mavericks, what he was able to do with this ball club, and this is a team which we all know Indianapolis and the Pacers, they're a small market team. What they've been able to do, void of any big time, trades and acquisitions during, this NBA season, has been remarkable. They obviously knocked off the New York Knicks in the series that, most people thought the Knicks would, have favored, and them getting back to the NBA Finals for the first time in basically 25 years for the Knicks. And it was the Pacers that, just went on to the NBA Finals, got here, was up at one point in this series, 2-1. And there was a lot of people across America that thought, man, are we seeing one of the most epic runs by an NBA team, man, that I've seen in a long time. And I'm not talking about from the perspective of just a dominant type of run. We've seen dominant runs. We've seen Kobe and Shaq dominant run with the Los Angeles Lakers, last team to be able to three-peat in the NBA. We've seen dominant runs. The last team to repeat in the NBA, the Golden State Warriors with KD and Clay and Steph. We've seen dominant runs, but this run would have been just one of the most remarkable ones because it came out of left field, meaning that the Pacers, and I don't get it twisted, this is a team that, after January 1st, they had the second best record in the NBA behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. And, they won 50 games this year, which is a respectable season. But nobody thought that this team would be 2 wins away from winning an NBA championship outside of the state of Indiana or around the surrounding Indianapolis area and Pacer fans across the country. But right now, they're in a danger zone. And, danger zone is that they're one loss away, man, from losing the NBA Finals. Good part about it, man, is that Game 6 for them will be played, in their home turf. We'll see what the fan base and the crowd and the people, just around, just the, the whole area and just Pacers fandom across the board is going to definitely give them that support. But there's an interesting caveat in this series. And the interesting caveat is the health of Tyrese Halliburton. We all seen Tyrese Halliburton go down, man, in game number 5, in the second quarter, with the calf injury. This guy's had calf injuries before. Calf injuries, calf strains. They're nothing to be played with, man, because they connected to the Achilles. I mean, yours truly, myself, I suffered an Achilles injury. So I know about, just being tentative, because it's a real thing, especially, just from a pain threshold standpoint. And if you're a guy just like he is, who's really a speedster and, a guy that, bounce around out there and just move around out there. Oh, yeah. He's definitely hampered. You seen him try to tough it out and obviously go back into game number 5, but we all knew he was a shell of himself. And if we're talking about game number 5, we got to talk about and put some respect on his name. Put some respect on his name, and that's Mr. Jalen Williams. This guy, man, with a 40-piece, one of the youngest players in NBA history, man, to put up 40 points in an NBA Finals game. I mean, the third youngest dude to ever do it. One of those guys, Russell Westbrook. We all know about Russ. But another one of those gentlemen that's on that list that did it at age 20. Can you imagine that? Age 20. A young Magic Johnson in the 1980 NBA Finals against the Philadelphia 76ers. OGs all know that whole story, man. Kareem going down. It went down in Game 5. A lot of people thought the Philadelphia 76ers with Mr. Dr. J, Daryl Dawkins. I mean, they had a great ball club. And for Magic to go out there and put up a 42-piece, 15 boards, and 7 assists, played all 5 positions, it's the greatest game I've ever seen from any professional athlete as a rookie. Best rookie performance I've ever seen. Across the board. Hands down. It ain't even close. And so for Jalen Williams, man, to get on that vaulted list was just outstanding. There's been a lot of people critical of this gentleman. To me, I've been supportive of him. Now, obviously, he's an all-star this year. I thought that, he had his best foot forward. Me and being a young player, I thought he was going to get better and better. And boy, has he got better and better in this series. I mean, this guy, man, since Game 1, his scoring impact has increased. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander obviously is the front man, the leader of the band. But Jalen Williams, man, over the past 2 games, he's been playing the best ball for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Without question, he's been the best player on the team. And just that output, man, was just Herculean. Putting up the 40-piece was efficient, 14 for 25 from the field. And I thought that the smartest thing that, he's been able to do was understanding when the jumper's a little bit broke, go ahead and get to the basket. And if you look at least half of the players across the NBA, if they took just that simple philosophy, how much better the game would be. There's been a lot of, criticism about, teams shooting 8,000 threes. I've been one of them. I don't mind the 3-point shot. You know what I'm saying? I can shoot myself. I enjoy the 3-point shot. Don't get it twisted. But when you got teams just going out there shooting trays, man, all game long, man, they kind of distort the game a little bit. And I thought that Jalen Williams, man, just going into his bag, getting downhill, man, has been paramount, say for them. Speaking of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having 31 points in game number 5, he's, not as efficient from the field. I mean, 19 for 21 ain't half bad. Don't get it twisted. But 13 for 14 from the free throw line, I thought it was epic. And from the Pacers standpoint, they got behind the 8 ball. And I thought that they might have been, headed towards blowout city. I thought that's where we were teetering towards. And for the Indiana Pacers, again, man, to do another epic comeback. I mean, they outscored Oklahoma City, going, from the end of the third quarter. And then just that huge nice little run. Shout out to TJ McConnell. I mean, this guy is just on one. I mean, just on one, just from the energy standpoint. And you can tell when he comes into the game, he just picks up the energy level of the other players on the Indiana Pacers. And as much respect that I do have, just for the head coaching job that Rick Carlisle has done this season, I thought he made a crucial mistake in Game 5. And that crucial mistake was not going back and not riding the hot hand of TJ McConnell. I thought that was huge. Because to me, I knew, to use a boxing term, I knew Tyrese Halliburton was out on his feet. I knew he was out on his feet. And you could tell just from a defensive scheme standpoint, Oklahoma City, they knew what time it was. They knew he wasn't looking for his shots. And that's why they was able to play the passing lanes. That's when you seen, the turnovers. And I'm not going to put the whole turnover blame on Tyrese Halliburton because Nembhard had some huge turnovers. Pascal Siakam, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he ended up with 6 turnovers in the game. He had some turnovers. And so you can see the air kind of get let out the balloon, man, when this team had gotten all the way back to 2 points with 7 minutes left. And I thought, here we go again with the Pacers. Here we go again. And for McConnell to come back in the game with basically under 2 minutes left in the game, I thought that Rick Carlisle made a huge mistake. And right now, this is a team that they're in survival mode. Now, with Halliburton, there's been a lot of speculation whether or not he'll play in Game 6. He will play in Game 6. I'm not even entertaining that. I mean, you get to an NBA Finals, man, and it's not guaranteed, even if you're a young player, that you'll ever get back to this stage again. He playing in Game 6. Now, his effectiveness in game number 6, I'm not sure. And I just think that Rick Carlisle, man, he's got to go for the gusto and, play, and change up some of his rotations just in regards. I was very, very surprised that we didn't see Thomas Bryant in game number 5. I thought he was a guy that can give you some quality minutes. He went to Tony Bradley, and Tony Bradley didn't play that bad per se. But I was just a little bit surprised that Thomas Bryant went out there on the floor. This is a guy that's been shooting the basketball pretty well, man, over the last couple of weeks. We saw that in the Knicks series. He gave them, a big, huge boost. Benedict Madam has kind of, fell back into the pack a little bit. So we'll see just the moves that, Carlisle do, man, in game number 6, which to me is going to be paramount. Usually the others play well on their home turf. And we saw that in game number 5 with Cason Wallace, hitting some big time threes. He hit 3 threes. You had Wiggins hitting 4 threes. And I thought between those two guys, them having 7 threes collectively, I just thought that, the others from the Indiana Pacers perspective, they really didn't match that. And I just think that there's some fundamental moves that Rick Carlisle has to do, especially too, in the smart, chess, plan that Mark Daigneault has done. And he recognized that, man, if they're going to pressure full court, we taking Shai Gilgeous-Alexander off the ball. We taking him off the ball. We're going to make sure that this guy got enough energy, man, towards the end of the game, man, to do what he do and put on a Superman cape. And he's able to pull that off, especially in game number 4 where he really put on a Superman cape and basically won the game for him. Huge, output in game number 4, especially in the fourth quarter of that game. And so we here now. We are here now, man. So I can't wait for game number 6. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I got the Oklahoma City Thunder winning this series in game 6 or 6 games. I said that before the series began. And my prediction for game 6 in Indiana, man, as much as I love what the Pacers and just what their whole fan base has been about, man, and just the run that they've had during the season, obviously, big time, moves and, just the excitement just around, just their little run with obviously Reggie Miller, going from announcing to being on the side with the great Oscar Robertson, native of Indianapolis. I just love the whole swag that they brought to the table, man. But I think it ends tomorrow, especially when you don't have Tyrese Halliburton at 100% and you going up against your counterpart at the point guard position is the MVP of the league and he ain't going nowhere. And his wingman is just on one looking like the best player overall in the series. And he might have an outside shot of winning the NBA Finals MVP. Wouldn't that be epic? We saw that last year with Jaylen Brown winning the MVP award, over Jason Tatum. And so we might be in that position again. But as much as I love what the Indiana Pacers have done so far this season, I think it comes to an end, man, tomorrow night, man. I think it's going to be a close ball game. But I just think, man, with Halliburton not being 100%, he's already a guy that's not going to go out there and give you 35 and 40 points. No way. That's just not part of his game, not part of the scope of his game. And I'm not blaming him for that either. He just, his game is his game. He's playing the point guard role. But he's definitely big time and clutch. And so he's going to have to dig deep, man, going up against, just that juggernaut, man, in the backcourt for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So we'll see what it do, man. We'll definitely see what it do. We'll definitely check back in, man, coming up on Friday's show, man, whether or not we got a new NBA champion or we headed towards a game 7 on Sunday night. Can't wait for that. And coming up, we going to get into, before we close this thing out, man, some interesting comments, man, by LeBron James, man, on the Mind the Game podcast with Steve Nash. Shout out to my man Steve Nash, man, one of the most funnest point guards, man, we've ever seen in the history of the NBA, man. Just well deserving, just as far as one of the most elite point guards we've ever seen in this sport. So I'm gonna get into the whole, ring thing, man, and just, guys' careers just been, cut short a little bit or not, given all the pub that they deserve because they hadn't won an NBA championship. I'm gonna get into that, man, coming up. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The spot. Yeah, man, before we get out of here, man, don't forget to check your boy out, man, on Facebook, We On Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, on YouTube at We On Fire Sports. Also, too, on Twitter at We On Fire Sports. Man, we out here, man, so definitely also, too, man, you can check out the podcast whenever podcasts can be listened to, especially on Podbean. So I appreciate, man, all the love and the check-ins as well. But before we get out of here, man, it's just a little bit interesting tidbit that I was able to see, man. We had the whole Mind Your Game podcast, man, with LeBron James and, man, the great Steve Nash, as I alluded to a little bit earlier. One of the most funnest point guards, man, to watch, across the NBA landscape, man, with his run just in multiple stops, Dallas Mavericks, most notably the Phoenix Suns, had his little stint with the Los Angeles Lakers. Last time we seen Steve Nash, he was the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. And one, I appreciate, two, great players, man, sitting down, chopping up, basketball, man. So I'm not going to front on that. I know there's a lot of, what they call, quote unquote, LeBron haters per se out there. And, I've had very, very strong opinions about LeBron James. To me, it just kind of all revolves around, man, and you knowing yourself, man, as the greatest player of all time, man. I just can't rock with that. I've had the ability and the privilege, man, to watch not only him play in person, up front and personal, and to watch his career over the years, but also too, Mr. Michael Jordan as well, in the same, same airspace. Got a chance to, see Mike play in person, and also too, obviously followed his career, man, being a native of Chicago. But they had a conversation about this whole, as guys' careers don't have that same oomph or that same respect because they hadn't won an NBA championship or just a championship just kind of overall in all sports. And LeBron, expressed his opinion about it, which part of it, I kind of rock with, is that there's certain NBA players, especially, and I'll stick to the NBA, certain NBA players that don't get to say that same oomph because they hadn't won an NBA championship. And we all know who they are. Obviously got the Charles Barkleys of the world who, in the media and on TV just about every day, man, during the NBA season. Kenny Smith always joking and having fun with him, man, about not winning an NBA championship. But Charles Barkley, man, is one of the greatest power forwards, man, the game has ever seen. If you're young and a little bit, man, definitely do your research on Charles, man. You can YouTube him, man. He was huge. 1993 MVP. So, he's definitely one of the most 75 greatest players in NBA history without question. Guys like Allen Iverson's of the world, Hall of Fame as well. So those guys, I believe, man, are well respected. And I think in the NBA community as a whole, players know players. Fans know players, meaning that if you're a great player, you're going to get that respect. Sometimes, it's just circumstances that you don't win an NBA championship. A lot of times, careers kind of cut a little bit short, man, due to injury, so forth, or just simply just bad luck. I'm just going to keep it 100. But for LeBron to come out here and say that he don't understand just the ring culture, and you talking about a guy that left Cleveland the first go around, which he had every right to leave Cleveland. He's a free agent. He earned his free agency. He tried his best, to try to get the Cleveland Cavaliers an NBA championship through the first go round. And I can't even front on that. My whole thing was just, to me, it was just interesting, the whole spectacle about, him going to Miami and just the whole, show with, Jim Gray at the time. And I'm just like, I wouldn't, that's not really my swag. I really wouldn't have done it that way per se. But for this dude to come out here, man, and say this, for a guy who was attempted to try to piggyback multiple championships, try to glitch the game, man, and if you go down the laundry list of just the guys that he had played with as an NBA player, I mean, you got a laundry list of future Hall of Famers that this guy has played with. Him trying to, parcel and build teams on the fly, and, him being really what you call the pseudo coach or the pseudo general manager. Why are you doing it for, fam, if it's not relevant? Why are you doing it? Meaning that at the end of the day, when you went on the shop and you proclaimed yourself as the greatest player of all time, you said that after y'all beat the Golden State Warriors and won an NBA championship. So miss me with that. Now, as far as his career and the longevity of the career, without question, he's had the best longevity portion of his career of any NBA player, hands down. But when you out here, man, just trying to kind of kick knowledge about, You don't understand, just why, the rings are so important when your whole career, basically, since you've left Cleveland, the first go around has been all about that. So that's just like, man, calling the kettle black, straight 100, man. It's hypocrisy. And I know LeBron lovers, man. Don't get at me, man. We just kicking straight game on here, man. As we mentioned, man, we on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. We straight talk, no chaser. We gonna keep it 100. And when we see a hypocrite, we finna call that out. And I thought it was just hypocritical as hell, man, for that. But that's basically, man, the show, man. I appreciate you guys checking your boy out again, man, on episode number 60. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, man, it's been a long, amazing season across the board. We going to wrap this thing up, man, once we get out of the NBA Finals and get out of the NBA Draft that's coming up shortly after the NBA Finals. We'll definitely put a bow on this season. Definitely probably going to have some, friends and the counterparts and, correspondents, man, fall through, man, for the season finale, which will probably be in maybe the next 2 episodes or so. But, man, I appreciate, man, all the love and the feedback. We'll catch you guys, man, later on towards the end of the week. We may have a new NBA champion, man, by the time I connect gang with you guys on Friday. We'll see what it do, man. But I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast. Spot.